Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 252 and we have a good one for you today. Today's fish is a really neat fish that I told you we would be talking some more about, so I hope you enjoy and I hope you are looking forward to this. Today's fish that we're going to be talking about is, bam, the dwarf seahorse. Now the dwarf seahorse, or scientific name Hippocampus zosteri, again, that's Hippocampus zosteri. It is part of the family Cygnathidae, which is the family of seahorses, pipefish, and sea dragons. Now, the dwarf seahorse is native to the western Pacific Ocean, more specifically to the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, the Bahamas. It's not a very large geographical area, but it is quite prevalent throughout that area. You can find these throughout the deal, but they're really restricted to seagrass habitats, usually in shallower water, and most commonly found in bays with very high salinity, in coral reefs, floating vegetation, and between the roots of the mangrove swamps. But they're really associated with that seagrass. And that would make a lot of sense. Seahorses are premier camouflage experts, not octopus level, but they are fairly good at camouflaging, and that's their main defense, along with the fact that they are miniature tanks, as we discussed in previous videos. Now, the seahorse does not have a very large home range. Males actually have an extremely small home range, about 1 meter squared, which is about 11 square feet, and females will roam much more than that. Females actually roam about 100 times the range of the males, so 100 square meters or 1,000 square feet. So females are definitely much more mobile than males, and what that tells me is that the males are actually fairly territorial, and that's evidence in their reproductive habitat, which we'll discuss a little bit later. But when you get a fish that's this territorial, that's pretty good indication that when they have this small of home range, that they are actually fairly territorial. Now, as the name would suggest, the dwarf seahorse is a very small fish. They average about 2 to 2.5 centimeters, which is about 0.8 to 1 inch. And they have a max length of 5 centimeters, which is around 2 inches. So even at their absolute maximum size, this is still a very small fish. And you have to remember that seahorses kind of crunch themselves up, so rarely are you actually seeing them stretched out to their full length. Now, they can be found in all sorts of colors, this sort of beige yellow coloration. You'll find them a little bit lighter with dark spots. If they're a little more colorful, they'll have white spots, but essentially they'll come in a multitude of colors. Sometimes they'll even have different little, we'll call them like growths almost that come out there. Anything that can help them camouflage better with their environment, and they can even change colors. A lot of people don't realize that, but seahorses can change colors fairly quickly and easily. You can find the dwarf seahorse in greens and blacks and, basically anything that helps them camouflage. Because you have to remember that seahorses are fairly bad swimmers and do not move very fast. Now, how do you know you have a dwarf seahorse? Well, one of the easiest ways is that it's a small seahorse. It's very tiny. But if you want to get more into it, it's usually distinguished by the number of fin rays on its dorsal fin and pectoral fins. And the dwarf seahorse has between 10 and 13 fin rays. And then another thing is that the dwarf seahorse will actually have 9 to 10 trunk rings, which are not always easy to see and count, but it's when you develop an eye for it, it's a little bit easier to count them. But realistically, it's kind of that typical seahorse shape. They got their head really angled down right up next to the body, a curled up tail that they use to hold on to things a lot of times. You know, when you think of a seahorse, this kind of just fits that profile. It's just smaller, which, you know, is interesting in its own right. What a lot of people don't realize, though, is that seahorses are actually fairly voracious predators. They'll sit here. This is a good example. This is an aquarium, obviously, but they're sitting, hanging onto things, and they are looking for prey. And if they see prey, they'll actually reach out and suck up the prey through their snout. It's important to note that they don't really bite. They actually suck it up through their snout. And the food that they eat, which is going to be small crustaceans, shrimp, brine shrimp, small fish fry, essentially anything that they can get their snout through their snout, they're going to try and eat it. And the reason why they eat so much is food actually goes through seahorse digestive tracts very quickly. And the faster that food goes through a digestive tract, the less nutrients that are absorbed by the digestive system. And there was an interesting little fact that the dwarf seahorse can actually consume up to 3,000 brine shrimp per day, which is much more than you might think. Brine shrimp are very, very tiny organisms, but that's still a lot of brine shrimp. Do not get me wrong. Now, as with most other seahorses, the male is the one that carries the offspring, but they still compete for females within their territory, especially if the territories overlap. The males will wrestle with their tails, and they'll actually snap their heads at each other, it's pretty. I wish I'd brought a video. The snapping their heads is actually fairly audible because of their exoskeleton that they have. It looks fairly aggressive in terms of what people kind of think of seahorses, but it's really, really bizarre. But even when they have their territories and they go with the females, they still have a very elaborate courtship dance, and the female is actually the one who starts the courtship dance, which consists of multiple phases and goes through multiple days. And I'm not going to go into the full reproductive phase because I'm fairly short on time today, so I do apologize. This does have to be a shorter video. So I do encourage everyone to go look at the dwarf seahorse courtship dance and all the phases and all there, but I believe it's about 5 days and all that, and then it ends with the females depositing the eggs, and the male kind of shakes back and forth to help the eggs settle in his pouch. You know, it's truly a bizarre thing, and I do encourage everyone to go through this. But now for the interesting fact that we're going to end the video on. You know, I've talked numerous times about how seahorses are just horrendously bad swimmers, and they are. I don't want to say they're bad, they're very, very slow. They do what they need to do. But this fish is actually a Guinness World Record holder. The dwarf seahorse has the world record of the slowest moving fish, with a top speed of 1.5 meters or 5 feet per hour. So that means that 1 square foot home range that the male has, it takes them 15 minutes to get from one side of their territory to the other. Which is why I believe that a lot of the male's territories actually overlap, because even if a male is encroaching on another territory, they're not going to make it over there in time. And that's really important as well. I want you to think about that. I said top speed, meaning that's not their cruising speed. So if they're booking it, they're making it across their territory in an hour. Most animals, in my experience, their top speed, their cruising speed in terms of fish is usually about a third to half of their top speed, meaning that they are patrolling their territory, and it takes them probably 3 to 4 hours just to go around the outskirts of their territory. So it's an insanely slow fish. And it actually kind of tells you how the females are almost constantly on the move. And they're constantly looking for more food and other mates and things like that, especially with how short-lived the species is. They usually live around 1 year with like a max of 2 years. So, you know, those females are constantly on the move, I bet. And just truly bizarre when you think about it. It's 1 square foot of area, but I mean, it may take them all day to go around their entire area and to actually defend their territory. Truly bizarre when people think about it. It's hard to actually comprehend that speed. It really is for a human to actually physically think about that, how slow that actually is. Definitely hard for me to wrap my mind around. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you do, I'd really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. If you'd like to support the channel, please click the link down below. It is by no means expected, but very much appreciated. Regardless, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and peace.